The nurse screamed as the wedding ring slid across the delivery room floor, and the man who had promised forever picked it up, smiled, then placed it on another woman's finger. Rain slammed against the hospital windows while bright lights filled every corner. Liora fought through pain that shook her whole body. She could hardly breathe. She looked at Rowan, the billionaire she had trusted with her heart. His cold eyes never met hers. Instead, he held the hand of a woman dressed in soft white clothes. The stranger smiled as if she belonged there. Why would Rowan throw away the only promise that had ever mattered, and who was the woman standing where a loving husband should have been? Liora reached toward him with trembling fingers, tears mixed with sweat on her face.
Please.
Please, she whispered. Our babies.
Our babies.
Rowan looked down at the shining ring resting on the other woman's hand. You don't need this anymore, he said without even blinking. Those words hurt more than every wave of pain racing through Liora's body. The doctor called for everyone to move faster. Machines beeped louder. Nurses rushed across the room. Then another alarm burst through the air. One of the babies was losing strength before even taking a first breath. The room exploded into motion. A nurse pushed Rowan back, but he stepped away on his own, fixing the cuff of his expensive jacket instead of looking at his children. The woman beside him wrapped both hands around the ring and smiled like she had won a prize. Liora shut her eyes for 1 second. She remembered the tiny apartment where she and Rowan once laughed over cheap pizza. She remembered nights when he promised that no amount of money would ever change his heart. Back then, he had not ruled half the city's hidden streets. Back then, he was simply a man chasing impossible dreams. Now those dreams had turned into dark power. Outside the hospital, black cars waited with silent guards. Every person in the city knew Rowan's name. Newspapers called him a business king. Whispered voices called him something else. They said every nightclub, every shining tower, and every back alley deal carried his shadow. Nobody dared ask questions. Inside the delivery room, Liora no longer cared about his money. She only wanted her children alive. The first baby cried. A second later, another tiny cry filled the room. Then silence. The doctor froze. The third baby, someone shouted. For one terrifying heartbeat, nobody moved. Then the smallest baby gasped. A thin cry broke through the fear. 3 tiny voices filled the room together. Liora cried harder than ever before. They're here, she whispered. Before she could even hold them, Rowan turned toward the door. Take care of them, he said without warmth. He walked away with the woman wearing Liora's ring. Liora watched the door close. Something inside her broke forever. Hours later, the hospital became quiet. The triplets slept beside her. She touched each tiny hand. They were so small, so perfect. They had done nothing wrong, yet the world had already turned against them. A gentle cleaner stepped into the room with a mop and bucket. She paused after seeing Liora crying. My child, the old woman said softly. Some storms hide the sunrise instead of stealing it. Liora forced a weak smile. Before the cleaner could leave, 2 tall men wearing dark coats entered the room. Neither carried flowers. Both carried fear. If this twist stunned you, tap subscribe, smash like, and drop your city in the comments. The older man closed the door behind him. He looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then he knelt beside Liora's bed. I have served Rowan's family for 30 years, he whispered. But today, I came for you. Liora stared at him, confused. I don't want anything from him anymore. You should. He pulled a small black envelope from inside his coat. Across the front was a silver mark shaped like a crown. I was ordered to destroy this, he said. Instead, I brought it here. Liora carefully opened the envelope. Inside rested 3 tiny gold cards. Each carried the footprint of 1 newborn baby. Each also carried a bank seal she had never seen before. What is this? She asked. The old man's face turned pale. It means your children were never ordinary babies. Liora frowned. They're just my sons. The man slowly shook his head. No. He leaned closer until only she could hear him. The moment each child was born tonight, someone hidden above Rowan became richer than every family in this city by placing everything into their names. Liora felt the room spin. That's impossible. I wish it were. A sharp knock echoed through the room. Everyone turned toward the door. The old man's face lost every drop of color. They found me, he whispered. The handle began to turn. The door swung open before anyone could move. 4 men in black suits stepped inside without a word. Their polished shoes made almost no sound against the clean hospital floor. The last man closed the door behind them and locked it. Liora pulled the blankets closer around her babies. Every part of her body still ached, yet fear gave her fresh strength. The old servant stood in front of the bed. "You should not be here," he said. The tallest man smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "We are here because you forgot who gives the orders." The room felt colder. One nurse entered with fresh blankets, but the men blocked her path. She looked from one face to another, then quietly backed away. No one wanted trouble with Rowan's empire. The servant slipped a tiny silver key into Liora's hand. "Hide this." She closed her fingers around it before anyone noticed. The tall man took one slow step forward. "Did you give her anything?" The servant answered without fear. "I gave her hope." The man laughed. "Hope has no price." "You are wrong," the servant replied. "It is the only thing that cannot be bought." Without warning, another voice came from the hallway. "Enough." Rowan entered the room. His dark coat was still dry, despite the heavy rain outside. The woman wearing Liora's wedding ring stood beside him, smiling as if she already owned everything she saw. Rowan looked at the servant with cold eyes. "You disappointed me." "I served your father before I served you," the servant answered. "He taught me that power without honor destroys every family." Rowan's face hardened. "My father is gone. But his promise is not." For one brief moment, Rowan looked uneasy. Then it disappeared. He nodded toward the guards. "Take him away." The men grabbed the old servant. Before they pulled him through the door, he looked back at Liora. "Never lose that key," he called. "Your children will need it before the 7th sunrise." The door slammed shut. Silence returned. Liora stared at Rowan. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at the sleeping babies but showed no joy. "You would not understand." "Then make me understand." Instead of answering, he placed a thick envelope on the table beside her bed. "There is enough money inside for 10 lifetimes. I don't want your money." "You should." "I wanted my husband." Those words struck harder than any shout. Even the woman beside Rowan stopped smiling. Rowan turned away. "You were never meant to stay beside me." He walked toward the door again. Just before leaving, he paused. "If anyone asks, those children are no longer part of my life." The words echoed long after he disappeared. Liora held her babies close. She knew she could survive hunger. She could survive loneliness. But she would never let anyone erase her children. Morning arrived with gray skies and cold wind. The hospital finally released her. She had nowhere safe to go. Reporters crowded outside the entrance, hoping to catch a picture of the famous billionaire's abandoned wife. Camera flashes burst like tiny storms. Questions flew through the air. "Did Rowan leave you? Who is the other woman? Will you fight for his fortune?" Liora lowered her head and protected the babies from the flashing lights. An old blue taxi stopped beside the sidewalk. The driver rolled down his window. "The servant sent me," he whispered. She climbed inside without another question. The taxi crossed busy streets, past shining towers, dark clubs, and forgotten alleys, before stopping outside a small brick building hidden between taller offices. The sign above the door had no name, only the same silver crown she had seen on the black envelope. Inside waited an elderly woman with bright eyes. "You came," she said with relief. "You know about my children? I have waited many years for them." Liora's heart raced. The woman gently touched each baby's forehead. "They carry more than wealth." "What do they carry?" "The last clean promise your husband's father ever made." Liora frowned. "I don't understand." "You will." The elderly woman opened a hidden drawer beneath an old wooden desk. Inside rested a faded photograph. It showed a much younger Rowan standing beside his father. Between them stood a smiling little black girl holding Rowan's hand. Liora stared at the picture. "Who is she?" The woman looked directly into Liora's eyes. She disappeared the very night Rowan's father signed the greatest fortune in the city's history. If this story has you holding your breath, tap subscribe, smash like, and drop your city in the comments. Liora turned the photograph over. 3 handwritten words covered the back. "Find the sister first." A chill raced down her spine. She looked up, but before she could speak, every light inside the building suddenly went dark. Outside, tires screeched. Then someone began pounding on the front door. The elderly woman whispered only one sentence. "They know where the babies are." The pounding grew louder until the old wooden door shook on its hinges. Liora wrapped the triplets inside one blanket and held them against her chest. The elderly woman did not panic. She walked to a bookshelf, pulled out a faded blue book, and pressed it. A hidden door opened behind the shelves. "Go," she whispered. "What about you? I have guarded this place for years. Tonight, I guard it one last time." Liora hurried into the narrow passage. The hidden door closed behind her, just as the front door burst open. Angry voices filled the building. She could not see what happened next, but one sound stayed with her forever. The elderly woman laughed. It was the fearless laugh of someone who had already chosen courage. The passage led into an old subway tunnel beneath the city. Water dripped from cracked walls. Far above, trains rumbled like distant thunder. Liora kept walking, even though every step hurt after giving birth. The babies stayed quiet, almost as if they knew silence would save them. At the end of the tunnel stood a steel door. The tiny silver key slipped into the lock as though it had waited there for years. The door opened. Inside was a simple room with clean beds, warm lights, fresh food, and rows of locked cabinets. On the wall hung one large picture. It showed Rowan's father smiling beside the same little black girl from the old photograph. Below the frame rested a sealed letter. The envelope carried Liora's name. Her hands shook as she opened it. "My dear Liora," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then my son has failed the test I prayed he would pass." Tears filled her eyes. "He was never raised to worship money. I built my fortune to protect innocent people from cruel men. Before I died, I placed almost everything I owned into a trust that could never belong to criminals. The heirs would only receive it through children born from true love." Liora looked down at the sleeping triplets. The letter continued. "Those children are now the lawful owners of every honest company, every home, every school, and every hospital I protected. Their wealth cannot be stolen. It can only be guarded." She finally understood the gold cards. The babies had become the richest children alive the moment they entered the world. Then she reached the final page. One sentence stopped her breathing. "Rowan knows none of this." Outside, footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Someone had followed her. The steel door slowly opened. Rowan stepped inside alone. He looked tired, older. His eyes found the triplets before they found Liora. "I finally found you," he said quietly. She stood between him and the babies. "You came to finish what you started?" "No, you already took my ring." His head dropped. "I know. You left us. I know. You watched another woman wear our promise." His voice almost broke. "I know." Liora pointed toward the letter. "Did you know your children own everything your father truly valued?" Rowan frowned. "What are you talking about?" She handed him the letter. As he read, the color drained from his face. "My father never told me. He did not trust the man you became." Rowan closed his eyes. "I spent years believing he left me almost nothing because I disappointed him." "You did disappoint him." "I know." He looked at the babies again. "The woman wearing your ring was never my lover." Liora stared at him. "What?" "She worked undercover with federal investigators. We wanted the men inside my criminal empire to believe I had abandoned you. They would stop watching you and chase me instead." Liora searched his face. Every lie she had believed suddenly cracked. "I hated you. You had every reason. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because one whisper would have gotten you, and our children killed." Heavy footsteps thundered outside. The real leaders of the criminal empire had arrived. Rowan gently placed the letter back into Liora's hands. "Take our children through the back exit. What about you?" "They came for me. I won't leave you. You already gave me something worth saving." He smiled at the triplets. "My family." He stepped into the tunnel and locked the steel door behind him. Liora heard shouting, then silence, then police sirens. Minutes later, the tunnel grew quiet again. Morning sunlight poured through the hidden exit as Liora stepped into the fresh air with the triplets safe in her arms. Weeks passed. The truth reached every newspaper. The criminal empire collapsed. The honest businesses protected by Rowan's father remained in the children's trust. Schools reopened. Hospitals stayed free for families who could not pay. Homes were rebuilt. Hope returned to streets that had forgotten it. Rowan survived, accepted responsibility for his choices, and walked away from power forever. He asked for nothing except the chance to earn forgiveness one day. Liora never rushed that answer. She raised the triplets to value kindness more than wealth, truth more than pride, and people more than power. Whenever they asked about the old wedding ring, she smiled through quiet tears. A ring can be taken, she told them. Love must be proven. Years later, the three children stood together before thousands of cheering families as they opened another hospital, carrying their grandfather's dream into a brighter future. Liora watched them with pride. The woman who had once been abandoned in a delivery room now stood surrounded by lives changed because she refused to surrender. The greatest fortune had never been the money. It had always been the courage to protect love when everything else was lost. If this ending touched your heart, tap subscribe, smash like, and drop your city in the comments for more unforgettable stories.